Go check out our movie if you haven't. Critics are calling it intense, disturbing, and a whole bunch of other stuff. It's available to stream at this very moment. Go to anangryboy.com to find all the links. On Halloween night of 1998, in the town of Midland, Ontario, 18-year-old Jake Just disappeared without a trace. Since then, the circumstances surrounding his vanishing have baffled investigators and haunted the community for over 2 decades. And so the question remains, what happened to Jake? This is the case of a vanishing on Halloween. Midland, Ontario is a small, picturesque town nestled on the shores of Georgian Bay. And Jake, well, he was just a typical Midland teenager. He was known for his friendly personality, was well-liked, and had a bright future. At 18, he was preparing to attend college and had a close group of friends. Standing at 6'2", with blonde hair and green eyes, Jake was a popular kid at his school, with an adventurous spirit and a love for the outdoors. Every year on Halloween, Midland, known for its calm lakeside living and generally serene environment, transforms a bit. The streets become filled with people in costumes, and the air buzzes with excitement as parties and celebrations take place all throughout the town. On the night of October 30th, 1998, Jake attended one of these parties with his friends, and this would be the last night that anybody ever saw him again. The party was held at a local house and was filled with the typical teenage antics: music, beer pong, maybe a couple shots of Bacardi Limon. Jake, being his usual charismatic self, was having a great time, maybe too good of a time. Witnesses from the party recalled Jake being pretty intoxicated. He was seen breaking a beer bottle over his head at one point, a stunt that led to a minor head injury, but he walked it off and continued on enjoying the revelry. As the night wore on and people began to head home, at around midnight, Jake and his friend decided it was time to take off too. They were going to be walking home when they came upon the possibility of taking a shortcut through the Sunnyside Woods, a dense, dark area that offered a quicker route to the street on the other side. His friend, preferring the lit path along the road, agreed to meet him on the other side. And Jake, as mentioned, was fairly intoxicated, was just having a good time and wanted to venture off into the woods alone. His buddy got to the designated meeting spot, expecting Jake to already be there since he took the shortcut, but he wasn't. Minutes passed and the friend continued on home. By morning, concern began to build fast because Jake never made it home at all. His mother Debbie spoke with his friends who shared what had happened. She then reported him missing to the Midland police. The authorities quickly initiated a search, focusing on the woods where Jake was last seen. Volunteers, friends, and neighbors scoured the area. Their exhaustive efforts would uncover no trace of Jake or his belongings. It was as if he had entered those woods and vanished into thin air. As police questioned those from the party the evening before, there was a sense of added confusion because there were conflicting accounts from partygoers. Some mentioned that Jake had been involved in a heated argument before he left, while others recalled seeing him being followed by an unknown figure as he headed off into those woods. These discrepancies only deepened the mystery surrounding his disappearance. That initial search for Jake lasted 8 days, with hundreds of volunteers combing through the dense forest and surrounding marshes. The search conditions were challenging, with thick underbrush and difficult terrain hampering their efforts. Helicopters hovered overhead using thermal imaging to try and detect any sign of Jake. Divers explored the nearby marshes, while cadaver dogs sniffed through the woods. But all their efforts were ultimately in vain. The question swirled because if he were out there, short of wandering off in the woods for hours on end, they should have been able to find him. People wondered just how drunk he actually was. Did the head injury hurt him more than anyone knew? And if someone did follow him into the woods, who were they? And what did they do with him? And 3 years would pass by and still no sign. The nagging idea of this case being unresolved prompted the police to review it again. Additional searches were conducted, but these too yielded no results. Detectives interviewed approximately 200 witnesses, piecing together the events of that night to try and get a clear picture. But again, just like 3 years prior, nothing was knocked loose and no definitive leads emerged. Among those interviewed were individuals Jake supposedly had fought with at the party, but no evidence linked them to his disappearance. They were a small group of guys that stayed behind at the party when Jake and his friend left, and there were many witnesses to corroborate that. Jake's mother, Debbie, has always been relentless in her search for answers. Over the years, she's received numerous calls from people claiming to know what happened to Jake. Each time it happens, she gets a glimmer of hope. Each tip gets recorded and passed on to the police, but none have led to any breakthroughs. And the case was eventually handed over to the higher authority of the Ontario Provincial Police. Despite their best efforts, Jake remains missing. Several theories have, of course, emerged over the years, each offering a different perspective on what might have happened that fateful Halloween night back in '98. The primary one being that Jake's disappearance was the result of a drunken accident. Some speculate that he lost his way and stumbled into a swampy area, possibly due to his head injury and level of intoxication. However, investigators found no evidence to support this theory, as no physical traces of Jake were found in the swamp or the surrounding areas. This town is pretty densely settled, and had he walked off for a bit, chances are he would have come across a road or a neighborhood. There's also a slim chance that maybe he walked long enough to reach the edge of Midland Bay and fell in only to be washed away, but all that seems very unlikely. Another theory suggests that Jake was abducted shortly after entering those woods. And this idea is based on rumors about some sketchy people in the area that night. In a similar vein, some believe Jake may have followed a meadow that led him to a nearby strip club where he could have run his mouth to the wrong people and been abducted and taken somewhere. Again, though, investigators found no evidence or witnesses to corroborate this theory. A more sinister idea involves a violent encounter. A Reddit user claimed to have heard a confession from a man who admitted to beating someone to death near where Jake disappeared. This story aligns with a version of events where Jake fled into the woods after being chased by someone from the party or just outside it. According to this account, Jake was seeking help at a nearby house, but was dragged out and beaten to death by local drug dealers. Despite this chilling account, no concrete evidence has ever surfaced to support it. Debbie remains skeptical of all these theories, particularly the ones involving foul play. She believes her son was capable of defending himself, having studied karate since childhood. And the community continues to be haunted by Jake's disappearance, with many hoping that new evidence or a breakthrough will finally bring closure to the case. Interestingly, some tips have come in from psychics who claim to have visions of Jake's fate. One of them suggested that he made it out of those woods, only to be struck by a car and his body hidden by the panicked driver. Another psychic suggested that Jake's body was buried under a pier on the shores of the Georgian Bay. Setting aside their prejudice for more reliable sources and desperate to bring closure to this puzzling story, the police actually followed up on what these psychics said. However, while these theories add to the intrigue, they didn't lead to any significant discoveries. Adding to the complexity of the whole thing, some tips have come in over the years and pointed to the possible sightings of Jake in other towns, while others say he might have been taken by a secretive group. The lack of concrete leads and the plethora of conflicting theories have certainly made this one of the most perplexing cases in Ontario's history. To this day, the investigation into Jake Just's disappearance is still ongoing, the Ontario Provincial Police leading the efforts. And even though 16 years have passed, the authorities say they are committed to solving the case. The $50,000 reward for information leading to an arrest and conviction still stands, and authorities encourage anyone with credible information to come forward. Midland has been deeply affected by this strange and tragic incident. Annual vigils are held to honor his memory and keep the case in the public eye. Friends and family continue to seek answers, hoping that one day the truth will come to light. And Debbie to this day refuses to give up hope too. And she continues to advocate for her son, speaking at public events and using social media to keep Jake's story alive. Her persistent determination has kept the case in the spotlight, ensuring that it's not forgotten. Midland's support has been a source of strength for her as they collectively hope for a resolution. But for now, Jake's story continues to be an anxiety-provoking reminder of just how quickly someone can vanish from our lives. So there was the Jake List story of vanishing on Halloween. If you have any information, no matter how small, please contact the authorities. That one was suggested by one of our Patreon subscribers, so I hope I did the story justice and wish that a resolution comes to this case someday soon. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and stay safe out there. I'll see you in the next one.